And we're back. This is episode 500 of the Colombia Calling podcast. And yes, you, the listeners, have been clamoring for a big name, for someone who can, well, provide us with a story worthy of 500th episode. And, well, no less than the dancer, the individual, the inspiration that is Fernando Montaño is on the line from London with us. I don't think he needs a great deal of introduction, but I will say a little bit. He was born in Buenaventura, moved to Cali as a dancer, was seen and then won a scholarship to dance in Cuba and train in Cuba. They're dancing for the National Ballet there. Was spotted again in Italy, moved to Italy to dance, was then interviewed for the role in the Royal Ballet in London, got the part, not speaking English, became the principal at the Royal Ballet, is now a painter, a fashion designer, an artist, was meant to have his first art exhibition in December in Sofia in Bulgaria, but maybe it's coming to Colombia soon. I don't want to speak anymore because really this is all about Fernando, thank you so much for coming on the Colombia Calling podcast.
Hello, I'm delighted to be with you today, starting this 2024.
It's incredible. And I know that today, the day we are recording, it was snowing out of the window. You could see it snowing in London. How is that for a boy from Buenaventura?
Well, it's very unusual. It's very unusual for a boy from Buenaventura, but even for people here in London, as I think it's been a very long time since we have last snow.
And a snow that lasts, of course, if you've just come out of a huge storm, you're now into snow. It'll probably be dark in a minute or two over there. What a contrast to where I am now, where it's 35 degrees. It brings me to, you've come a long way, Fernando, a long way since humble upbringings in Buenaventura. So on the Pacific coast, a troubled city, I would say, is the most polite way of putting it. Perhaps you could tell us a little about your upbringing there in Buenaventura.
That's very interesting because when I was there as a child, my experience, or maybe just because I was a little boy, so you didn't hear much about what probably was going on around the city, but my upbringings were so beautiful. I have very good memories of Buenaventura. The smell, the humidity of Buenaventura, and of course, like the seafood, the fresh seafood that we get there, and chontaduro, that probably not many people knows what is it, but yeah, this was like a very magical place. In my memories, Buenaventura, it was very, very magical. That it was the place where I learned how to run, to walk, to start doing my first steps of dancing, actually.
But it's great that you should have this memory of Buenaventura in that way, because it means you describe something different to what we obviously see in the news every day.
Now, especially I think now, I mean, I'm pretty much like at the time it wasn't that rough as it have become, because I didn't remember in this 4 or 5 years that we lived there, because I lived there until I was 5 years old, sorry. I didn't remember to hear all this violence and all these things that, like the places at the moment live in. So for me, it was a completely different experience. And now as a growing up person and getting reconnected with Buenaventura, as I've been trying to promote certain projects with Children Change Colombia, but also with some renewable energy projects that we are trying to promote. I'm trying to promote over there. So it's great to have that opportunity, because I believe in the people, and I think Buenaventura people may just need a little bit of a chance to shine and opportunity. So if we can all try to help, why not just to try it?
Yeah, of course, if we all, actually invest ourselves in this. And of course, you must have seen that the first cruise ship in, I think, more than
I
30
heard about
years.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, I heard about that. And also for me as well, this Christmas, I mean last Christmas actually, I was watching and I noticed that they did a beautiful lighting, which I mean I never heard of it or something like this before. So I think slightly bit like things started to change, so it started to look a little bit more positive, and hopefully we will all gather together and try to make that reality to be different.
Well, it's baby steps. It has to come a long way,
Yeah,
obviously. But as you say, I mean, of the criminality there, it's the people who suffer,
yeah,
and I think even small things, like you say, like putting the lights up at Christmas, this gives a sense of belonging and local pride. And these
yeah,
things do move, I think, society in the right direction. What is interesting to me, of course, is the Pacific coast is a largely overlooked part of Colombia, and we
yes,
always hear about athletes coming from the
yes.
Pacific coast. And I mean, you are an athlete in itself, a sort of dancer, but of course, we know more about the football players, the
Of
people in the
course.
selección and so on from the Pacific coast. You originally, your dad wanted you to be a football player.
Exactly. Yes, I just one day when I was 12 years old, I just hung up my football shoes and changed it for the ballet shoes. But yeah, it was. I think it's probably like quite natural for people in Colombia or Latin America in general,
Hmm.
because it's the most prominent sport that we can see around. So yes, I did play football and it was fun. I remember, but what I didn't like, it was just, I always been quite skinny and all the bruises and the kicking, and so that was not that pleasant. So yeah, but it was fun at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So age 12, how did you make that transition? Because that's quite late to sort of take up dancing.
It is true. I remember when I was auditioning for the ballet school, Impel Ballet, which is the only ballet school that we have in the country, and also in South America, where you can do your academic and
Mhm.
artistic studies. I remember they didn't want me. The director wasn't sure. Gloria Castro, with I adore, because thanks to her, Impel Ballet assist, and then I started also my ballet career there. But yeah, I remember she wasn't sure because I was too old to start doing ballet. But fortunately, I did have the support of other teachers that were at my audition, and also Alejandra and one of the ballet teachers, and Jairo Lastre, and one of the four jewels of the Cuban ballet at the time of my audition. She was there, and also she was the one that pushed apparently the most,
Ah,
saying that if they didn't take me, she will take me with her to Cuba to study there. So I think they must have said, "Oh, he must got something, so we must take him." Yeah,
if a Cuban professional with the history and the accomplishments that they have there could see something in you, then it has to be taken seriously. That's the truth. And so, age 14, you were only in Cali then training for 2 years. Age
yes,
14,
and
you were in Cali.
yeah, I live in Colombia actually until I was 14 years old.
Mhm.
Because I moved to Cuba afterwards, after I got the scholarship and my second prize on the competition. And yeah, now as a growing up person, I just think of how much hard must have been for my mother. Because at the time I was so pleased just to go and become the better version of the dancer that I could be, but I didn't see that side of how hard it must have been for my mom and my papa and my brother and sister, maybe just to let go like the baby of the family. But still it was very wonderful that my mom and they all made that sacrifice to let me go
Mhm.
and to Cuba, because it did teach me so many things. Not only to become a great ballet dancer, but also as a human being, like so many values of of appreciating sometimes when you have very little, and how creative and how resourceful you can become, because that's one of the things that I admire from the Cuban people, that besides they have so many difficulties, they always somehow overcome all those issues and difficulties that they have.
And of course, you say the sacrifice of and letting the baby of the family go, your mother, your father. It was an economic sacrifice as well. You had the scholarship to learn, but your living expenses were obviously put up by them. I've read about all of the sacrifices that your parents had to engage in, and losing houses and so on.
Exactly. Yeah. It was, it's incredible sometimes, like how much families and parents, um, how much they do for their kids, because at the time I didn't have a clue of many of those things, those problems that they were having behind back home, because they didn't want me to be worried, or they wanted me to be focused on my studies. And even that grandma in Cuba, which is Heide, she was the lady that looked after me all those years when I was living in Cuba. She also made, she became my mom and papa and all those other roles of the family while I was in Cuba, making sure that I will, that I will always have a plate of food on the table, that I was happy, regardless of the other things that were going on. So it was a big change, because even though Colombia is Latin America, Cuba is a completely different culture. Politically as well, it was different. So there were many changes from one day to another. That again, for a boy, for a guy of 14 years old, it was great, because he made me grow up a bit faster than many other kids at that age. But at the same time, there were some tough moments that when I remember, sometimes I even get emotional. So don't judge me if I may cry. But yes, it was very, very special. Like having the opportunity to go and study in Cuba. Yeah.
And I've been to Cuba a couple of times, but the last time was some years ago. And of course, we stayed in a local family's home, the casas, the pensiones, so on. And the only thing that the family knew about Cuba was from an infamous soap opera, telenovela. So they wanted to only discuss El Patrón del Mal. When you arrived in Cuba, what did they know about Colombia?
Well, I remember I remember, because even my colleagues at school, they used to say that they thought that everyone will be like Margarita Rosa de Francisco, because they saw Café con Aroma de Mujer at the time. And so about those things. But funny enough, my colleagues, they never really mentioned, for example, like the problems of the insecurity that we were living in Colombia, like because of the drugs and all these other problems that we had there. So it was very interesting. But the telenovelas, the soap operas, this was like the way they know about what was really, or what other people, other countries kind of were living, or the way they think. But of course, like life isn't it like a telenovela, isn't it a soap opera? So it was very funny, because I used to watch with my grandma as well, and she used to tell me and to rent those telenovelas, soap operas, that a lady have like a renting place, and yeah, we used to rent it from time to time.
It was interesting. I think my wife, who's Colombian, had to sit down and discuss El Patrón del Mal with the family.
Wow.
It was curious to me that this was the cultural representation. But while life is not the same as the telenovelas, it is a cultural export.
Exactly.
Have you considered yourself a cultural export from Colombia to the world?
Well, yes, because I mean, I'm very proud of being Colombian, and I always try to promote it the best way possible that within my power or within my art or in anything that I do. And then again, um, UK has been the country that I have lived the most.
Mhm.
And again, where I have done most of my career, and so it's hard sometimes because I'm like a third culture kid, a
Mm.
third culture person, because I've been Colombia. Of course, I was born in Colombia, but then I moved to Cuba, and then I went to Italy, and now living in the UK. All these different cultures somehow I have taken from them, and I still learning from them. Um, but then when I think about home, it's hard for me to tell because UK is like uh, where I really maybe became more mature and have all my contacts and have done my career, but I'm still Colombian.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing because I just adore Colombia, and as well as I adore, UK. So it's a mix of cultures that I always try to be the best, ambassador of both. So yeah.
This is
Rich, Richard, sorry, there's something in the sound. I couldn't quite. It's breaking when you're talking. No, it's like a delayed sound. I can't hear you anymore. Okay.
hello.
Yes.
Okay,
Good. Now it's good.
it's the connection. It's the connection in rural
Okay.
Colombia. So we will edit some of this out. But as I say, I have a fascination with identity, and of course, I've lived overseas a long time. People ask where home is. My home is Colombia. It's where my professional and personal life have become one, and my kids. But I'm interested to see my children, how they grow up. And, they do say they are half English, half Colombian, but they've lived their whole lives in Colombia. Uh,
Yeah.
what I was fascinated about is you got to London to the Royal Ballet and not speaking English, and
Yes.
that
At
puts
all.
you at a disadvantage straight away. And I understand that you missed, was it a performance because you didn't
Yes.
understand what was written down?
Of course, yeah. That was in my first week, and I remember the faces of my colleagues that they were not very happy because it was, when you are in a theater in a company like the Royal Ballet, we do performances like almost every day, and there are different casts, but there's always emergency because there's someone that is sick or injured last minute, and then they have to replace it. And again, I wasn't injured. I should didn't understood what was going on, and where do I have to check like the casting if there is an emergency change or anything like that. So yeah, my colleagues were not very happy because they just thought that I maybe had been a little bit arrogant, like saying, "Oh, I have to do a quarter ballet, so I will not come." But no, it was nothing to do with that. It was just literally that I just didn't know how to communicate and how to speak and read all those
Mm,
notes and things. So it was very, very tough. It was
mm,
extremely tough, like not being able to communicate with the
mm.
people. But also, I lost mom
Yeah.
when I lost mama when, just 2 months after I arrived. So again, that made me close myself a lot more, and so my communication was even harder because my only way of expressing or feeling good with myself was just dancing. But yeah, the lack of speaking the language it was a very, very tough um, issue. But also, um, when you go abroad and you change to a completely new country, it's not easy. So it was, from every way I used to look, it was completely difficult. Um, but the dance always were there for me, that it was helping me to keep going, and so that's what I'm very grateful to my art.
Yeah. And you mentioned that people maybe considered you as arrogant, not showing up. Is there a lot of jealousy and arrogance in the industry?
Well, of course, it's very competitive. Ballet
Yes.
is very competitive, and because it's also very individual.
Mm,
It's everything is after you. Um, but yes, it is tough because everyone wants to get the roles and everyone's wants to be at front, and all the time everyone get those chances. And even for me, I remember when I first arrived, on my first year, I got chosen to go to represent the Royal Ballet in the apron competition, which it was a big, great thing for me. But I knew that many other dancers that were before me in the company, they also would have loved to be going there, and they didn't got that chance. So it's I think it's just part of the work, and yeah.
but you trained as an understudy to, obviously at the time, one of the greatest, and this must really have strengthened you to train and be the understudy of Carlos
Yeah,
Acosta.
of course, having Carlos around, and of course, like many of the other big stars of the Royal Ballet, it was very inspiring. It was very
Mhm.
inspiring. Darcy Basil, of course.
Mm,
Um, so because many of those stars, when I first arrived, I used to see them just on the videos and knew about them. But then when you have them and you can see them, you learn and you get so much inspiration, and also it make you try to get to their level. So it was, I mean, I've been very fortunate, yes.
Well, it's hard work. There's obviously fortune there, but it's hard graft. Let's not diminish the efforts that
Yeah.
have been taken. One thing that really fascinates me is that in your own choreography and, I think, creativity, you've done uh, how would we say, performances that highlight the issues of migrants.
Yes,
Something which is obviously very, very topical right now. And no doubt you've read the articles about the worldwide flow of migrants coming up through Colombia to go to the
of
Darien and
course.
so on. How do you feel right now with this? Will you continue to work on this subject, on this topic?
Yes, yes, because those are topics that are very relevant for society right now, and not even just in Colombia. I mean, worldwide, we are living. I think there are like five or six war, but no one's really talk about the others. So it is a challenging time for everyone, and Colombia, again, it has been suffering for so many years for several reasons, different reasons. And so it is important for me as an artist, use, some of those tools, of 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 art, to express and try to not only raise up those issues, but also trying to find solutions, and also maybe give a little bit of hope and happiness to people, because there's already so much horror and hate and uncertainty in the world, that why the arts have to also sometimes be focusing in the dark and the sadness. And instead, I like to be a little bit more hopeful, and try to portray things that will show those issues, but again, in a more joyful way, or more inspiring way, so that people have lapses of time or moments in their life that are of happiness, and see
Mm.
beauty within the arts, or other things. Yeah.
Because you take this platform of which you have worked for, and of course to send a message. And I would get in trouble if I didn't mention Children Change Colombia. You
Of
are
course.
obviously a
Yeah.
patron, the patron of Children Change Colombia, of which I am a trustee. And I know that you went down to the barrio of Santa Fe in Bogota and saw
Yes.
the project down there. Did you?
Yeah.
I went down there. I managed to get the British ambassador there
Yes.
before you. Did you? I mean, what was that experience like? Because it's pretty,
I
it's pretty nasty down
it's
there.
Oh gosh, yeah, I tell you the truth, like, I have never ever even thought that we have a place like this in Colombia. It was a completely like a shock to see, all these young, and I mean, it's a mix. And apparently, because I was asking some of the people, that they have like different areas, like the girls, like, if you are, I mean, there are levels.
Mhm.
Like, if you are in this street, you are able to charge a bit more money, because I don't know, some kind of a status, or so it was completely like tough. I mean, I have never it really touched me, because um you know sometimes when people don't have a proper job or something like this, like, maybe they think, their body is the way of maybe trying to survive, and selling their bodies, like, in for sex. So it was very, very incredible, and also to hear some of their stories, that some of them, they are escaping from other. There was a Venezuelan lady as well
Mhm.
so it was very, because we live in this probably bubble world, and me as an artist, that I performing in the theater here and there, and then we don't really um know that issues and problems like these, like very heavy problems, are happening right now while we are talking. So it was very, very, very interesting for me to go and visit this area of Colombia that I had never knew
Mm.
that existed. So, and it's happening. Yeah.
I, on a personal note, had dance not given you an opportunity, do you think you could have been, one of the
I
displaced
mean,
child from the
exactly.
Pacific?
Yes, of course, of course, of course. And this is something that also, when sometimes I go and do like talks, um, I always say this, that I I was fortunate enough that I discovered my passion and love from a very young age, that I don't think many people have that chance. And also, I believe that we have many talents. We don't have just one, which also I found it hard, because as an artist, many times I faced that issue, that people say, "Oh, you are a dancer. You should only dance. You shouldn't be doing other things," which I always find it hard, because I just need to express myself in a different way. So I know that uh, not everyone get the opportunity to discover at a very young age what they want to do in life.
Is anyone can be in one of those difficulties, or in one of those situations that their families have to migrate and then go, and maybe don't have an easy life. Yeah.
Yeah. So as you say, we all have, well, hopefully, many different skills, and you have started your own fashion line.
Yes,
And you told me off air that you are starting to work with people who produce Montpos filigree. So where I am now,
yes,
tell us about
exactly.
your fashion line.
Yeah, well, it's a luxury brand. I try to be as sustainable possible, and I'm working with people from Peru and Colombia in Montpos, because the textiles that I use is alpaca, so it's very organic. It's very organic, and also, it's beautiful for me to be able to make, or to show all these like traditions that these Peruvian ladies have in the ways they knit.
Hmm.
And again, in Colombia, with the filigrana, even though I not necessarily do filigrane, I do my own designs, but then they also they made their touch, they
Yeah.
made their magic. So it's good for me to be able that not only to do like fashion or create something fashionable, but also to engage with those native people that have this history of working with textiles and also gold, as is the case in Monpos in Colombia. So to show that skills that they have throughout my fashion. So it is lovely. I enjoy it, and I'm a big fan of fashion since I first moved to Italy, to Milan, but also when I started to get more involved with the late Dame Vivian Westwood, that also was the one that introduced me really to what was the fashion world.
I was going to ask about you were quoted as being her muse for a long time, and she must have left an impression on you.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah, and I miss her already. It's been actually a year since
Yeah,
she
yeah.
passed away, and yes, because with Vivian, she always, well, she was my biggest critique when she used to come to see me dance. So yeah, sometimes she was tough, but um, it was very special because she always encouraged me to be the better version of myself, not only as a dancer but also as a human being. And yes, I remember sometimes I used to go to her studio and tell her maybe my issues, and then how she tried to say that you that I always have to show the best way that I could ever be to become the most classical ballet dancer that maybe the Royal Ballet have, and things like that. So it was very special. It was very special, and also like there wasn't any filters between us. So I always was very honest, and she always was giving me a very honest opinion of anything that we were discussing.
Very good. And you've moved into, as we mentioned at the beginning, art. Are you painting? Is this what you're doing?
Yes, yes, yeah. This is something very, very interesting because my mom used to do pottery, and she also used to paint and do. But since I was a kid, I used to make things for her. I mean, my painting is being known for my late mother, my mother, and my family only, practically. Only very, very few people knew about that I paint. And And the reason that I went back to this is like last year, I was feeling a little bit let down by some friends, and I went back into, to my roots of painting. And I was going to have my holidays in the south of France, and I lost these 6 paintings that I was doing during this period of time that I was feeling a little bit down because of those friends. And I don't know why, but I just didn't want it to lose those paintings because I spent so much time making it and I put so much love in it. And over the sudden, well, I lost them on the train, and then I made like a public post just asking if anyone was on that train and if they may have seen it, if they could please just get in contact. Of course, I haven't found it, and I don't think I will. But over the sudden, like the director of the National Museum of Colombia, the friends of the museum, Maria de Los Angeles, she said, "Oh, Fernando, we didn't know that you paint." And I said, "Oh, well, yeah, this is something like I kept just for myself. This is just, a very personal thing." Um, but then she said, "Oh, we will be very interesting to see, the possibility to have to exhibit your art in the museum." So that's something that is doing starting now, like to have the conversations to make that happen. But also in Bulgaria, I got a sponsor that offered me to sponsor my first art exhibition in Bulgaria. I even though it didn't happen because I have to cancel, there was a little bit of some difficulties there. But still, I never knew that somehow my art would be having so much interest on people. And yes, I done my first sculpture, and I have few paintings now, and I'm doing much more, and I'm getting some conversations with some art galleries in London and Paris. So
Well,
yeah.
I'd say, I mean, you are an intensely private person, despite being a public persona. You are a private person. Maybe your art gives people the opportunity to see a bit more who you are.
I think so. I think so, and also I feel that I want to share it. I just don't want to keep it just for myself. So because something that I found very unique from painting, if I compare it to the dance, is that it's something that will always stays, that it will always remain on the canvas, if it's an sculpture, as an sculpture. But with the dance, yes, we can record the performances and do videos, but it's not the same um, feeling. It's not the same thing. So that then when you paint something, you cut that moment and that magic on that canvas that you put. And I think that's very powerful in terms of the longevity of the art, because I was thinking, and actually when I when I will be giving those paintings, when someone will buy it and it will go away, sometimes I feel already a little bit emotional that you put all that, but then I think it's good to let it go, like, so then that it goes away, that it flies, that it brights their life of other people when they will see it. So it's a very interesting thing, yeah.
Fernando, you have shared so much with us, and I know that you're incredibly busy. So I'm very, very grateful indeed. But with all these different projects, and this is how we will bring this to an end. All these different projects and so successful. How do you hope later on to be remembered?
As an artist,
An artist. Okay, that's
as an
that's a good
artist,
answer.
as an artist, and why? Because as I was telling you earlier, that sometimes people say like, "Oh, you are a dancer, so you just need to do this," and I don't agree. I feel frustrated when people are so narrow-minded and put you in like in a box. that if you come from here or if you have this characteristic, you should only do this, which I don't agree with that, because I do believe that people do have many talents, and sometimes the issue is like most of the time people don't discover those talents, and I think that's something that I wish people should, should try to be more adventurous, or having more. I always associate like my life have been a great adventure or a good venture, and I was born in Buenaventura. So in Spanish it makes more sense because you say mi vida ha sido una buena aventura, or my life is a great venture. But well, anyway, but it's I think it is important that people try things that never block themselves to learn new things, to do new things, because there's so much to do in this world.
Well, yeah, this is the title of your book as well, isn't it? Una Buenaventura.
Una Buenaventura.
Una Buenaventura. Yes. So it makes sense to me. Carlos, I keep saying Carlos Acosta in my
Carlos,
head.
because we were talking about Carlos.
Yeah, and that's why it's in my head. I apologize immensely. Fernando, thank you so much for your time and for opening up. Of course, you were the first Colombian at the Royal Ballet, first principal. There's now 4 Colombians, I believe, at the Royal Ballet, but you are the first. You have danced all and performed all over the world to some of the most recognizable people. I know that Michelle Obama is up there, the Queen, and so on. You are a patron, of course, to Children Change Colombia and other entities out there, organizations. So I mean, that you have time to paint, you have time to design, you have time to choreograph is amazing to me. So thank you that you gave us time to speak here on episode 500 of the Colombia Calling podcast.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
All right, what can we see you in next? Very quickly. So
what can we see? My next performance is going to be in Italy, in Sicily, and also I will go back to the Arena di Verona next summer. And I hope I be soon in Colombia, also showing my art and doing some other things.
Okay, so there you go. You got it. Who heard it here first? Sicily, Verona, hopefully Colombia soon. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this very special episode of the Colombia Calling podcast, episode 500 with Fernando Montaño. Incredible conversation, and thank you again. We'll be back next week with further interviews about Colombia or Colombia related, but this has been an absolute pleasure to listen to the story of a real inspiration from Colombia to the world. Thank you and goodbye.